Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, this evening. Actually, I know that there are a lot of things going on right now. It being April Fool's, number one. Number two, there's also a pretty groundbreaking launch that I just got a notification is going ahead in 20 minutes. So yay for them and yay for all of us. So we're going to get started, and I'm so pleased to be here and to have this incredible panel of women and a pretty big crowd for a Wednesday evening. So we're going to start, as we always do, with a quick fire round. I'm going to remind our panelists that we want one answer because I challenge you. One answer is often more powerful than a group of words because you really have to think hard about what that word's going to be. So we're going to get started. We're going to go down the line, and the second one, I'll come back down the line. So first job out of university, Rebecca.
Advertising claims.
It was working as a software developer at a nonprofit.
Out of university?
I was trying to fit into one word.
Lawyer?
See, it's challenging.
I was a researcher.
And then we'll start with you. Morning person or night owl?
A night owl.
Morning.
Morning.
Night owl.
100% morning person. Mentor or mentee?
Mentor.
Mentor.
Both.
Okay.
Both.
Okay. Instinct or data? I think I already know the answer to this one.
Data.
Instinct.
Data.
Both.
Okay. Risk taker or calculated?
Calculated.
Calculated risks.
Ah, look at you.
What she said.
Calculated.
Okay. The word that best describes your leadership style?
Supportive.
A benevolent dictator.
We're going to touch on that a little bit more later.
The opposite, so coaching style.
Trusting.
Very nice. One word for what success means to you today.
Fulfilled.
Happiness.
Happiness.
Productive.
I think this is something we're going to need to dig into later. I'm loving the answers right now. Biggest career lesson in one sentence. This is the part where I give you more than one word.
Maybe it's a little bit generic, but to do what you love.
Bet on yourself.
Ask, but be prepared for a lot of no's along the way.
Take risks.
Okay.
Calculated risk.
Calculated.
Overrated or underrated networking?
Depends.
On?
Depends on where you are in your career.
Okay. I'll take that.
I'd say underrated.
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 Okay. Do we like networking, ladies?
You better start.
You have to.
Okay.
Or pretend to.
I think that's a better answer.
There we go. Okay. And what do you wish you had more time? Money, confidence, or time? Which one do you wish you had more of?
Time.
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 Time and money.
So honest.
Why wouldn't we be? Because you work so hard. How do you reward yourself?
I'm curious what the answer would be if we had a panel of men up here. Not that I'm leading that or anything, but just in case.
I hate to tell you, I work in automotive.
And what would the answer be?
Where most of the dealerships are owned by men and
Money focused.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Do you believe that to be true?
100%. No.
I'm going off script.
My thinking was more time to make more money.
Okay. All right. Okay, we're gonna, now that I've got you guys all warmed up, and we're being very honest too. We're going to jump into some of the questions. Okay, so the first question is, take us back to a moment that you decided to pursue the career path that you're on. Was there a person, an event that made you pivot, or a defining experience that set you on this road? So
This
anybody
one's
want to
for
go?
all of us, right?
Yeah. Who wants to go first? Who wants to jump in and be brave?
Well, I can go first. I think this session is really about breaking through male-dominated industries. I'll tell you that I did not think I would be in automotive. Like, what girl, look at me, I'm Chinese, and what girl would say, hey, I'm really interested in cars, and that's what I want to do for my career. What I would say is that I entered Toyota in a non-core function, so call that linguistic services, and at some point 2 years in, one of the executives came and said, hey, would you want to try and go into the business? Let's start in communications. And so that was PR for me at the time, and I'm like, okay, this is where the taking risks on yourself, is what I should say, comes into play, right? It's more about, okay, this is I'm hugely uncomfortable with any car terminology. How am I supposed to explain this and how this works, and horsepower and torque and dimensions and, you know, limited slip differentials, things like that. And it's like, how do you, what am I supposed to do with this? And so that really was a pivotal point for me. Someone came, I was 2 years, and I was in my 20s, right? And they said, why don't you try this? And I said, okay, I'll do that. And then I'll say the second time that came around was also, I built the career in communications. And Lauren introduced kind of what I do right now. And a few years back, the current president of Toyota, he tapped me on the shoulder and said, I think you should go into the business. And this is where you get into the business, you figure out how supply chain works, vehicle supply chain, you figure out how distribution network works. You really lean into how the dealerships work and their operations, and so that's...
And was that that deeply uncomfortable for you?
It was deeply uncomfortable. How does a marketing person go into like numbers and wholesale of units and production of units and how you allocate them to 247 Toyota dealers and 40 Lexus dealers? Like, how do you...
But did you find that motivated you at the same time?
I don't shy away from a challenge.
All right.
So that was...
You think you're going to find that to be a theme today, everyone? Okay. How about you, Elizabeth?
Yeah, sure. So I'm I'm the managing partner of my law firm. I started off life on Bay Street, so I've been practicing law for about 23 years. And before I went to law school, I have a genetics biochemistry background, so I went in to go be a patent litigator, or actually I thought I was going to be a patent prosecutor. Look, it's a long story, I'm not going to lie. But the fact of the matter is that when I took a good, long, hard look about what I wanted to do, you will find those pivotal people in your lives that change your thinking, that change, you know, what you want to do, how you want to do that. Yeah, there's a couple, but really in large part, there's instances you're like, wow, that's really cool. I remember being in the Supreme Court, watching some submissions. I'm like, I want to do what that dude does, right? And it was great, but the challenge becomes being someone who really tried very hard, and it's a very difficult task to be a 6 foot tall white man. That was not something that was open to me. So it was really interesting to see how my path pivoted when I realized that I just got to be able to do this the way I'm going to do this, not the way I see other people doing this. But there's no question along the way, and I think that's where the question comes into play, is who really influences you. And you're never going to find that one person. What I am going to say is that you're going to find people in the places where you will least expect them. So lean into that experience and remember that experience, because it's going to come from places that you will not necessarily realize. And quite frankly, sometimes from people you don't really like.
When you least expect it.
When you least expect it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I'll build off of that. Just the people you surround yourself with have such a big impact on your life trajectory, your career trajectory. So yeah, for some more context, I'm doing my PhD in biomedical engineering now at the University of Toronto. And I did my undergrad in chemical engineering at Western. And I remember being in high school and not knowing at all what I wanted to do when I got to university. And I live in a really small town, so I had the same teacher for math, physics, and science. And she was like, you should look into engineering. And I was like, okay. And I went home, I Googled it. I was like, what is an engineer? What do they do? Wait, why do they do everything? And then that night when my parents came home from work, I was like, I'm gonna go into engineering. And I actually ended up, when I came to the time to apply to university, I applied to only engineering programs. So yeah, random enough, this one teacher at my high school really shaped the next 5 years of my life.
She put you on a path.
She did. I really need to reach out to her. Maybe
You
I'll send
absolutely should.
I'll send her this video later.
All right.
And then, so that was for my undergrad. And then the same sort of thing happened to me to start grad school. I did an internship when I was doing my undergrad, and I got into working in research. And it was meeting people there who I thought they just had really cool jobs. Same thing as you said, I want to do that. Like, how do I do that? So I fell in love with research and one of these like work co-op positions. And then that experience, meeting the people there, meeting the PhD holders at that company really introduced me into grad school. And so kind of landed me on this path that I'm on now.
Mine is similar. I'm originally Sri Lankan, so my parents moved us here when I was in my last year of high school, and I had a computer science teacher who taught visual basics, and I found it really fun, and it's like putting a puzzle together. So she encouraged me to sign up for her class again so she could teach me a different coding language, which wasn't in the curriculum. So thank you to her. And this is probably the dumbest way to pick your career. So I was like, this is really hard, so I should do this for our university. And I
Looks
applied
like
to
it paid
computer
off.
science. It did. I will be honest, in the second year, I thought I was going to fail out of the program because it was so hard. And I was surrounded by, like, in a 500-person class, there's about 10 women. And I was like, what am I doing here? I did not realize this when I signed up. But I'm also very stubborn. So I stuck with it and kind of worked my way through my career. And like what Elizabeth was saying, I had some folks that were very supportive and pivotal in my career. I never thought I would get to the point where I'd be leading an engineering org. But my manager at my previous company, he told me one day, he's like, you're ready for this. You need to go apply at a different company and lead an engineering org by yourself. And I was like, you're insane. But he was actually one of the reasons why I started applying, and I gave him my confidence. And now I'm here telling my story.
Stubbornness.
Yeah, it pays off
Defining characteristic.
very much.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I love hearing different stories and perspectives and the different paths that we all take. Sometimes the roadblocks that we face, or the perceived roadblocks in the moment, but when you look back on them, a couple months, couple years later, you realize like, oh, that wasn't so bad, was it? And then you get the real roadblocks. Dileshni and Shana, Shana, I just had to do that to myself. What's a challenge you faced early in your career that at the time felt like a setback? And in your case, you're still a student, so in your studies, what felt like a setback, going back to that roadblock comment that I just made, but you now recognize as the thing that shaped you the most?
Yeah, I can answer this first. I think if I'll extend a little bit to just life as well as career.
Absolutely.
But it's basically the title of today's talk, Male-Dominated Industries. So yeah, I grew up in a small town and I played competitive boys hockey. So I was constantly the only girl on the team for like probably over 10 years that I played on in a men's group. But anyways, so I was always kind of the odd one out, different. Voices were louder than mine. And it was like a challenging environment. And I remember it being really difficult at the time to fit in, to make friends. But after a while, I got used to that feeling, the saying like get comfortable feeling uncomfortable. That was definitely happening to me. So when I started my undergrad and I got to an engineering program where, as you mentioned, there's a lot more men in the room, I was kind of already trained to be in those situations. So my experiences growing up ended up really helping me when I got to the workplace and the career that was now a male-dominated industry. And so I remember like my peers kind of like bringing this up and struggling more, and I felt like I just had more, I was comfortable in those situations maybe more than they were because I had basically done 10 years of exposure therapy. So yeah, early on it was really challenging and really hard. Obviously still now to this day, it's not easy, but I'm just sort of a little bit more comfortable in those spaces going through what I've done.
It's going back to what I said earlier when we started the panel. It's a lot about asking and hearing no's. In my career, like I wasn't like the most confident person, but I knew things I wanted because I wanted to challenge myself. So I would ask for a new role or be a manager at the company I was working at because I was already doing like part of the job anyway. They would say no because they're like, we want people. The people that we give this title to, we want them to have already had the title at other companies. Or like, honestly, like, excuse my language, bullshit excuses. And that took a hit to my confidence, but I kept asking. I asked for more money. Yes, maybe, yeah, that's true, actually. That is confidence to keep going. But eventually it got to a point now that I know what I want, I know what I'm good at, and I ask for it. And if they say no, I feel like it's a loss to them, not a loss to me.
That is confidence.
It's true. I didn't feel that way back in my 20s.
Well, the fact that you asked for a new job or a new challenge, that's masked confidence.
That's true.
Okay. Women in leadership are often told to find their seat at the table. This is one I love. What does that phrase mean to you personally, and has your relationship with it changed over time? We'll start with Elizabeth.
Yeah, sometimes you have to make your own table, and that's okay. Look, it's important to frame the challenge and frame the opportunity. We don't have an issue with women in and gender parity in education any longer. And quite frankly, young girls are doing so much better in school right now than boys. And even in, with the exception of physics and some of your engineering classes, there was more of women in a lot of those classes than otherwise. So the issue isn't getting women into education and getting women into careers. The issue is exactly what you were talking about. It's when someone gets to the point where they're looking for promotions, they're looking for experience. They're looking for experience. What women don't necessarily have is by the time they get into the early parts of their careers, they're not putting their hands up because they need to make sure they can do the job the best that they possibly can. Whereas you get a guy who's in his early 20s, yeah, that sounds great, I'll do that. And hands are up. And as soon as hands are up, it means that they get more experience. So women, by the time you get into your 6, 7 to 8 year out of university, you quite frankly just have less experience.
Do you think that has something to do with like early childhood,
No
like
shit.
in the classrooms?
Yes. 100%.
Well, I'm just like,
No.
I was listening to your response and I was just wondering, like, I wonder if like that nature versus nurture conversation, right? Like, is that something that women learn from a very young age, is just to like sit back, be quiet, right? Like the boys are naturally loud and rambunctious. And I know this because I have 2 boys.
Yeah,
So.
listen, I do
Lived
not have any
experience.
anecdotal experience, and nor am I a behavioral psychologist. But what I do know is that it is less about behavior, and I don't know if it's nature versus nurture. But by the time women are in their early career, gender parity is a thing, and if not that, there's more women. So then, what is happening? And so absolutely. I mean, listen, it all goes back to there. But back to the original question, because I'm mindful of that. The table. The table. So in order to get a seat at the table, you have to have had that experience. You have to have the justification for someone to say, yeah, you know what? You're the one who deserves that seat at the table. So what I would say is, don't rely on anyone to give you that experience. Put your hand up and fail. Put your hand up and take that risk, and understand why, when you look to your organizations and it appears to be male dominated, that's not the issue. The issue is because it is gender parity, if not even favoring women at the beginning. How does it get there? The issue is how it gets there. The issue is what the table looks like now, because there is a problem with how you get there. So if that, my friends, is the opportunity to solve, and the only way to do that is put your hand up and being completely fearless at failing.
Shana.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said that perfectly. I read the book by Sheryl Sandberg, Lean In, and she talks a lot about sitting at the table. And just for an example, I think she talks about, it was a few years ago now, so I hope I'm not butchering this, but even once getting into the room and being into the table, or in the conversation where the talk is happening, there was, this table with a bunch of chairs around it, and then there was chairs along the outside. And then they found that the women, even though invited into the room, were sitting at the chairs, not at the table. So just kind of reiterating what you said. But for me personally, I think about this quote and this stance a lot. I think it's, as you mentioned, putting yourself out there to get experiences, to get yourself into those conversations and being there, be present. And then I guess, it's sort of evolved with me, which I think is the second part of the question, as now that I'm in those rooms, try to have a voice. Like, you were invited there for a reason, so try to participate in the conversation, come prepared, ask questions. And I think it also goes back to just trying to be more confident. So you were there for a reason, and so people want to hear your voice.
Bring more chairs forward.
Yeah.
Okay. Talk to us about a moment you had to advocate for yourselves, whether it was for a promotion, a deal, a project, or simply to be heard. Again, having that voice. How did you handle it, and what would you tell your younger self about that moment now? Start with Rebecca.
Okay. I would say that it was sometime in my marketing career, so before, kind of many years before this role, and I saw a peer of mine get a promotion. And so I walked in to my manager at the time and I said, let's talk about the glass ceiling that is in automotive. Have always been used to, we were talking about the tables that I participate in are mostly, if you look around the table, are mostly men. So it's always been that way. And even within the company, it's always been that way. So it was not that I wasn't happy for my friend. This was really my friend, but it was a very honest conversation. I'd say sometimes it ended even being emotional in some ways. Because it felt like no matter how hard I tried, I proved myself, it was just that much easier for someone who was not female. And they said, well, they're mobile, you're not mobile, and you've got a family, all of those things, right? And I'm like, those are not excuses. And so
Give me the opportunity.
Give me the opportunity. And so fortunately, my manager, I love him, and he listened, and it was surprisingly, I kind of was surprised that he thought that he didn't know that there was a glass ceiling. I'm like, well, you haven't been in my shoes, and observing all of these things, but there definitely is. And he took that on and reflected upon it, and I think that was one of those moments where I said to myself, I have had enough of just sitting back and waiting to be rewarded based on merit, because certainly the men do not do that.
No.
Do you think that women abide by the topic of meritocracy more so than men do?
That's a great question. I don't know if it's meritocracy. I think it's just we're used to taking things the way they are. Maybe it's that how education or whatever it was, and just going with the flow, whereas the men have always been encouraged to be ambitious. But here I am sitting and I'm internalizing my ambition, whereas it became the point of how do I externalize that ambition, because I know I can do the job just as well, if not better.
Internalizing ambition. That's one we could spend a long time peeling apart. Shana, do you have a perspective on that?
Sure, yeah, I can tell you a story about when I had to advocate for myself. I'm going to be a little brief because it may or may not still be the situation I'm in. So yeah, one example. We had our manager kind of implement a rule on a number of extracurricular activities we were getting involved with, kind of maybe taking away from the amount of lab work you were doing. Anyway, so they implemented this policy, kind of like setting a guideline of how much non-PhD work we were allowed to do, or whatever, something like that. And I think it kind of comes back to what you were saying. I feel like as women, we're rule followers. So I implemented this policy, I followed it, and it had consequences. So I stopped doing one of my teaching assistant positions because I was involved in also other extracurricular activities. But then I sort of felt like maybe not everyone was following this new policy. Maybe the men, for example. Only saying
Tell us
that
more.
because this is a safe space. I was just really frustrated because now I felt like I was following the rules, listening to the guidance, but now other people were getting opportunities that I was no longer. And so it's funny coming back to what would you tell your younger self or something like that. Early on in my degree, I don't think I would have done anything about it. I would have been like, oh, this sucks, but whatever. But I had been here a few years now, so I felt a little bit more confident. So I went to my manager and I didn't make it about anyone else. I just made it about myself. And I said, I've been doing many extracurriculars my whole degree, and I feel like I have the capability to continue doing them, because of XYZ. And so, if there's a problem with lab productivity or output, then I would like to have that conversation as one-on-one, like you tell me, I think your science is lacking because of XYZ. But if you don't do that and you make it sort of this generalized approach, then I don't know if you're also talking about me, if I should be worried about my productivity. So I said that to my manager, and there was a little bit of pushback, and then it was kind of like, oh, I'll think about it. And anyways, he ended up sort of switching the rule or making it now on a one-on-one basis. What you want to do outside of the lab, you could kind of bring it up to him and he'll evaluate sort of the work you've been doing recently and if he thinks this is within your bandwidth. So anyways, advocated for myself to continue pursuing the things I enjoyed pursuing that I think are also very meaningful to doing a PhD. There's lots of stuff outside of the lab and outside of research that really shape your program. So that's one of my examples.
A beautiful example of outward ambition.
Mm-hmm. If I can add, if you've got ambitions and they're not being met, don't sit there and stew. And I felt that I spent many years sitting there and stewing instead of advocating for myself. And so early on in your career, learn how to advocate for yourself. So what if you hurt some feelings? Not your problem. They're big boys in this instance, right?
Big boys and girls.
Yeah, and girls. And so we can all take it.
And I think that goes back to a lot of the things that you all said at the very beginning in your one-word responses. It's happiness, right? And that happiness is also your self-fulfillment as well. Okay. The concept, this one's my favorite because you'll understand in a second. The concept of work-life balance. Show of hands for who is achieving balance. One person. Okay. All right. So we're going to dive into this one. That concept of work-life balance gets thrown around a lot in professional circles. I'd like to know from some of you, what does it actually look like in your life? Are you experiencing balance, and is it even the right framework? Let's start with Elizabeth.
Oh man. Okay. So, show of hands. Who is there any lawyers in the room? Oh, excellent. Go on. Is there anyone who has worked with lawyers or is in the family? Okay. Do you remember what they look like? Did you grow up with them? Like, were they present? And that's excellent for everyone. I usually start off when we have new students and new associates in. I give this talk every year. So we're about 30 humans in our firm. You have 5,876 hours available to you in a year. And if you assume that you're sleeping, actually 8760, and if you assume you're sleeping 8 hours a day, then what's left over when you are awake is 58 and change. You have to eat and do other things.
Shower.
I mean, that's optional sometimes, let me tell you, early on in your career. So it is not unheard of to spend, my first years were 2,700 hours years. And so 3,000 hours. By and large, if you are hustling and doing what you need to do in this profession, you are somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 hours. And if you do the math, you may not want to do the math. But that is the reality, and that doesn't, I remember there was an articling student coming in and saying, well, it was really tough. I was burnt out after articling. And I'm like, oh, well, good thing, because it gets easier. I hate this question with a passion.
So do I. That's
And-
why we asked it.
Yeah, and the reason is that more airtime should be given to concepts of how do you make sure that you're working things in that are important, that will give you fulfillment, and things in that will allow you to build a business. So in my world, that's what we're thinking of, and it could be working things in to ensure that you've got the academic freedom and the ability to kind of do what you want to do and increase your currency from that perspective. So work-life balance is a fallacy. What it is a prioritization of what is important to you. And that's what you have to really focus on, because let's be clear, those things will change over time, and they will change with the cadence of your life. And they will absolutely be two words that will plague women, plague them. There is a 2 more seconds on this one. Marie Henin, thank you. Does anyone know Marie Henin? She's a boss. She's one of the preeminent defense counsel and lawyers and litigators in town. She's a remarkable woman. So this is an anecdotal statement where she was giving a talk, and it was 300 or 400 people, and it was a lot of people. And towards the end of it, there was a young woman who put up her hand and said, well, you just told us a story of how you got to be who you are, which is a remarkable story. She's got a book, read it. She said, well, now that we all know that it's not acceptable to consider work-life balance, it's not acceptable to work like you do, how do I become like you? And collectively, we're like, oh man, what's gonna happen? And she said, well, it may well be that you're just quicker and smarter than I am. The fact is, you can't cut experience corners. You can't shortcut that. And if that is what you want to do, and that's who you want to be, and you've got the aptitude and all the rest of the characteristics to do that, something else has got to give. And you got to figure out how to be okay with that.
And that could be your health, your mental health, your relationships. So it's always a choice.
Yep.
Okay. Shana.
Yeah, same.
Shana. God.
It's okay.
Everybody can
The
give me a
banana,
slap on the
remember?
wrist later. I know.
Yeah, same kind of thing. It is a choice. Yeah, I think that it just is. It should be more like do what you want to do, and if that's all the other things you just mentioned, then spend your time doing that. For me, I love the research that I'm working on, so I don't mind working late, and I'm excited by it, and it motivates me. I'm excited. So
And it's the phase of life that you're in.
yeah, it's for me right now. I love that I work late. I love that I get to do these experiments. It's such a unique experience that I won't be in a year or 2 years from now. So for me, it's not the right framework right now. Obviously, also in research, it does kind of come in waves. Like you might have a few months that are more lab experiment heavy and you're in at weird times because you have a 16-hour experiment or a 24-hour experiment. So there's a lot of like coming and going randomly. And that might last a little while, but then maybe, the next few months you have more like data analysis work so you can kind of control when you stop and start. So it does come and flow, and then so you can prioritize your time to do other things, which I definitely do. But I think the concept for me is just do whatever you want. Everyone should do what they want. So if I want to be in the lab working and I choose to do that over something else, it's because I picked that. So for me, that's kind of what my work-life balance looks like.
Dileshni, do you have a perspective on this?
Yes, I do agree with Elizabeth. There is no work-life balance. I have 2 young kids, a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, 2 boys. They're like chaos monkeys. So it's been incredibly hard the last 5 years, I'm not going to lie. I have a wonderful, wonderful husband. And he took as much parental leave as I did. We split it up like 50-50. It was never a question. He was just like, yeah, I'm going to do it because he's my kid too. Honestly, a lot of our friends were like, wait, what do you mean he's taking 6 months off work? They couldn't even understand that concept. And we were just like, she has a job, I have a job, we're both good, and these are our kids. So that really helped. And I do agree about like prioritizing what matters to you in different phases of your life. I did burn out after my first child and going back to work. I was trying to do it all. There was a big acquisition my company at that time made. It was like a $100 million acquisition, and I was asked to lead the integration on the engineering side. I was working crazy hours, and I had a 7-year-old that I was breastfeeding at home. 7-month-old that I was breastfeeding at home. So it was insane, and I was not sleeping because my kids don't sleep. So I burnt out, and I had to take a month off work, and I had an amazing manager who gave me that time. But then I worked with a leadership coach who used this framework called, I think it was called the Wheel of Life. Basically, there's like eight facets to it, and depending on where you are in your life, even month to month or day to day, it changes. Sometimes I want to prioritize my relationship with my husband. Sometimes I want to prioritize my career. Sometimes, like most of the time, I want to prioritize my sleep. So it just helped me realize that you kind of have to balance and juggle day to day and figure out what's the most important for you and your family and figure out a system that works.
I think you nailed it on the head. It's about prioritization. It's about one is always going to take more effort than the other, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just you have to be able to ebb and flow through it. And especially with young mothers who there's this need to prove to ourselves and to our colleagues that we can handle it. I can do that. But it doesn't get back to that happiness, right? And I think that when we get further into our careers, we realize that happiness is actually the best currency. And that's what we're all striving for. Thank you so much for your honest answers. And I'm really glad to hear that you guys don't believe in balance as well. Makes me feel a little, fulfilled a little bit. I'm going to ask you all the same question. So, what is something that you believe about women in business or leadership that the broader conversation doesn't talk about enough? Something you wish more people would say out loud. Scream from the top of the building. I think some of you already said it earlier on.
You want me to start on this?
Yeah, let's start.
As women, we go through several phases of life.
Seasons.
We need to be comfortable in our work environments, acknowledging that we do have motherhood, for those of us who choose to. Then you get to a certain age where you're perimenopausal. or you're menopausal. And I've many of the women who retired from my company, and funny stories about how can you be the only one sitting in a room full of men and you're having hot flashes and you're asking, am I the only one who's really hot? And everyone just kind of just looks elsewhere.
Yeah, because nobody wants to
And-
deal with you.
Yes, yes. But these are very normal things for us. And because we are built this way, we can handle all of this. Don't be shy about how these things are part of who we are as women. That's all I got.
I love it.
I guess to piggyback on that one, maybe mine's a little bit more niche of like PhD students joining their careers. So yeah, a lot of I hear this from a lot of my colleagues, but usually when you graduate your PhD, you're early 30s, and now you just spend 5+ years training and mastering some area of research, and you're at the prime start of your career. And it's also maybe the prime age if you want to start a family. And so going back to what you said, a lot of people think about this when they're graduating, where do you start? What do you do? How do you manage both? Then I also hear people say, are the hiring managers thinking about this? And so what does that mean for us? Are we, is that something that passes through their mind, that if we hire this candidate in a year or two, are they going to want to leave or whatever? So yeah, that's my take on sort of starting the motherhood process as a woman wrapping up their PhD.
I would tell you that hiring managers absolutely think that, but it shouldn't be part of the equation, is
Yeah.
what's disappointing. It should be something that we can all figure out how to manage and work around.
I may be dating myself by telling you that was something I was asked at one point
What?
in an interview.
Yeah.
Really?
And then I guess another thing I would say that I think we all said, but back to the confidence thing. Men are really good at being confident. And there was some quote about success is more about confidence than competence, which is shocking, but
Well, as
Yeah.
female icons on this panel,
be confident.
you all are confident. And I think we have the same level of confidence. It's just about finding that voice. Elizabeth, do you have a point of view on this?
Yeah, can you repeat the question again? Just want to make sure I get it right.
Absolutely can. What is something that you believe about women in leadership or women in business or leadership that the broader conversation does not talk about enough?
I'm going to answer this, but I want to underscore my view that the conversations that we just started are very important. But those conversations have been had, they continue to be had, and they take up all the air in the room. What I think that we should be talking about is how we advance. Yes, of course, we're mothers. We have often the brunt of elder care responsibilities. We're caretakers in that sense. Great, put that over there, and let's talk about how we advance in the career. Let's talk about how we build our businesses. Let's talk about how we advance internally. We definitely have that, but unfortunately, when you bring up issues of quote unquote the challenges that are quote unquote unique to women, it takes it all out, all of that air out of the room. So don't bring up work-life balance. Don't bring up the problems with motherhood and with elder care. Yeah, we get it. That's there. What we should be focusing on is how we build our businesses, how we build our careers, how we get the experience, how we be really focused on what we need to do in the workplace when we're having conversations about the workplace. Because I can damn well bet that there's no man and there's no group of guys who are having this conversation.
I somewhat disagree.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I think to me, seeing women, I really believe in the power of community. That's why I said networking is underrated. I've had groups of women in different parts of my life that have kind of empowered me to speak up, empowered me to speak up about my wins. And when you're talking about the different seasons in our life, there's a neighborhood WhatsApp chat in my area. It's all moms, and we call it a mom's market, but like there's just women. And it had spun off a perimenopause WhatsApp chat as well to help us help our
It's a
neighbors.
hot topic lately.
Yeah, it is a very hot
Literally
topic.
hot.
And I find that like talking openly about these challenges, either at work or with the community you build, it takes like the edge off of it, right? It becomes like, yes, this is reality. I am struggling with my 2-year-old who is refusing to put pants on before he goes outside, or I am dealing with like brain fog. I have no idea what's going on in my life, but I'm able to talk about it. My CFO accidentally saw the perimenopause chat in my car because it was just like blowing up messages and it was connected to the display. And I was like, yep, I'm dealing with brain fog. I have no idea what's going on. But I joined this WhatsApp chat to see if there's anything to do with perimenopause. They're like, okay. But like it just like neutralized it almost. Like I just spoke the uncomfortable thing out loud. Like that's what I mean.
Can I add, like, I feel like you have to normalize it so
Yes,
that it
that's
doesn't
a good word.
become an issue, and whether it's through recruitment or through as you're going through life stages, you just have to normalize it.
And I think it also encourages men to speak up
Yeah.
about it. Like I have folks on my team who, you know, have kids that they're dealing with like illnesses and serious medical issues that they're like, oh, at previous companies I wouldn't have brought it up, but here I'm bringing it up because you're talking about, you know, taking your son to speech therapy because you're struggling with that and trying to figure out how to do speech therapy in the middle of a jam-packed day of meetings. And it just feels like I want my folks to feel like they're in a place where I care about them as a human being, and like normalizing it.
Yeah, in the workplace, I get that, and that's definitely what we do. You know, I said to my team, I'm like, listen, you got a whole lot of ladies of a certain age. You guys have got to understand what we're going through. So I get that. I think that the challenge that I have is often and so keep in mind what lens I'm looking at this through. I'm looking at this through women in law and at conferences. And at conferences, they're like, oh, and there's the women's networking group that you get to go talk about only things that are women related, which is apparently limited to motherhood and perimenopause and how to care for your elderly, right? Like that's what that conversation is, as opposed to, oh wait, how can you develop your career, develop your business, etc. But that community is everything. Community is everything, and normalizing it to the people. I guess what I'm saying in terms of the airtime is give that airtime to a place that is productive as opposed to an echo chamber.
Yeah, like know the place and time to bring it up. Yeah, that's true. I agree, and I do not like those.
It's okay.
Yeah, and I don't like the conference like women in whatever where they talk about specific topics only all the time. I'm like,
Oh, women in engineering, you must do the exact same thing. Oh, irritating.
We're
But
more than just
Elizabeth,
three
if I can add
topics.
just to Elizabeth, like I want to validate what you're saying. Like if a woman says, I got to do this with my kids, I got to take them appointments, I got to take them to hockey, I got to take care of my parents. There's a bit of a stigma to it. But if you can get even the men thinking it's okay, and that they can do it, and they can speak up, and they actually do it themselves. Oh, I got pickup duty for school pickup duty with my kid. Then it feels that it gives us now an ability to say we're in an even playing field now, in spite of us always having been viewed as being in the nurturing, home role.
Well, it's interesting because, like, my husband is actually the primary parent for the school. They call him first.
so they
I'm the
actually
last to
follow
find
that?
out. Yeah, they do.
We tried to list that and they still call me.
No, just put your partner down.
I just don't
first.
answer the phone.
Yeah, like I just ignored 2 calls from the school. We'll deal with that later. Okay, last question, ladies. If you could go back and give one piece of advice to any woman just starting out in the industry today, not generic career advice, but something specific and honest, what would that be? Who wants to start? I'm looking for a volunteer.
You got this.
I didn't prepare for this. Not generic advice. Okay. I mean,
Something honest.
Being honest. I've been very honest. They
Yeah,
know a
you
lot
have.
about my life now. I mean, I kind of already said it before, and it's a little generic, other than like doing what you love, because I think that's why I'm okay with the non-work-life balance that I have, is because I really enjoy it. So yeah, I think also back to my first point, I'll just do a full circle. Get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Change is a constant. Okay, we're going to go down the line.
Cool. Fail. Fail often, fail hard, fail not for the reasons that you didn't try. Try your absolute best and do what you possibly can, but do not be afraid to fail, because through failure, you're actually going to get exactly what you need. But fail. You have to do that. You absolutely must. So I think that's probably one of the things that I would tell my earlier self and pretty much anyone who will listen to me. And across the board, fail, put your hand up and fail.
Celebrate failures.
I mean, I don't celebrate them, but
But maybe we should. Maybe there wouldn't be like such hardship or
no, in my
stigma
view,
against-
there should be hardship for failure, because that's how you learn.
Yeah.
I think that you should have fear, and fear is not a bad thing. Listen, remember, I run a law firm, right? I'm a litigator, so this is not the warm and fuzzy place to be. I already disclosed that I was a benevolent dictator, and that's accurate. My marketing coordinator, Justin, is here, and he will attest to such things. But I believe I believe in the power of fear. I believe in the power of failure, and I believe that what underpins it all is it truly is the quest for happiness. So very briefly, when I was about 8 years out of practice, I had what I called my third life crisis. I was 32. I'm much older than that now. And I thought that I was going to live to beyond 64. So I'm like, I'll call it my third life crisis. In 2 weeks, actually 2 weeks starting today, now that I think about it, I left my job, dumped the guy I was dating at the time, bought a new car because I didn't know when I was going to be employed again. I got into graduate school and I opened up a law firm. And that was 2 weeks, because this was not working for me. I was at the best litigation shop in the country, bar none, and I was at another very large shop before that, and I was doing exactly what I thought I was meant to do, that exactly what I set out to do, and I was profoundly unhappy and profoundly unhealthy, and I'm a gold star junkie, so I just like, you succeed. That's the way that I was raised, that more that you succeed, your success drives happiness. Hard, no. That is not what happens. And so I went down the rabbit hole, I feel like I did 2 masters, and trying to figure out what made me happy and what that might look like. And the fact is that happiness drives success. All of the research says that. I wish to God someone told me that's what it was. And failure is not a bad thing. Fear should be the fear of being stagnant. It shouldn't be the fear of failing. So that's my 2 cents. I know I'm a bit hardcore.
I love the honesty.
Oh, you don't get much more than that with me.
I do wish I met you when I was in my 20s,
I know, seriously.
honestly. It would have given me like a good slap across my face and be like, be true to yourself and like stop being this like soft, warm fuzzies. Yeah, exactly. I definitely needed that in my 20s. I would just echo what I've said before and what Elizabeth was saying too. Ask for opportunities. You're going to get set, people are going to say no to you. You might get opportunities, you might fail, but that's the only way you're going to learn and grow. And honestly, it's just going to build that muscle in you to like continue pushing yourself. If you want to be successful in whatever career path you have, that's the only way. And like in life too. Honestly, life is going to throw a lot of shit at you. And you got to learn how to roll with it, figure out the way forward, and figure out what you can control and what you can't.
So back to the theme of being in a male-dominated industry. Mine would be, don't let others define you. And it is really about, how do you define what makes you happy? I answered it as fulfilled. What would make me feel fulfilled? Define that for yourself, and don't be shy about getting it and going for it. And what I would say is, and it ties back to really two other things, which is don't let others define yourself, but don't limit yourself either. Take risks. Take, for me, calculated risks. Remember that? Calculated risks that you want to be happy with, you want to be fulfilled with. Take those risks. In my career, being curious was also helpful. That allowed me to say, okay, I can take this risk. I want to take this risk. I want to do this new thing that I've never done before. I want to go from marketing into the core of the business, and really work with dealers, and really understand their business. And to me, it was that moment of understanding, don't sit back and let others define what you should be because you're the only female in the room, because it doesn't matter. If you feel that you want to do this and you can do this, go for it. Don't let people judge you. You pull out that chair, you sit at that table.
Our biology does not define us.
Right.
Okay. Shana, Dileshni, Elizabeth, Rebecca, wow. Thank you so much for all of your perspectives, sharing your honest truths and opinions. It has been an absolute privilege to moderate this discussion. And I'm going to open it up to any questions in the room for this outstanding panel. I want to start by giving them a round of applause because you guys are rock stars. Rock stars. Any questions from anybody in the audience? Okay.
So I'm looking for some advice or some perspective. So I struggle with trying, so like the stubbornness, like where I will just keep trying to make something work. And, you know, whether it's like a relationship or a job or a role, like when do you know it's time to just walk away and like be done with it?
Before you ask that question.
Sorry?
I said before you ask that question, that's when you know. So no, and I'm being flip about that, but the fact is that by the time you get to a point where you're questioning whether or not you should stick with it, chances are you haven't really evaluated what you need out of it because you're not putting yourself first. So think about like, okay, if this is what kind of relationship, what are you putting in? What are you getting out of it? Are those things remotely in balance? Because likely by the time you get to the question of like, should I keep doing this? You already have your answer. You just have to come to an acceptance of that.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for a great panel. My name is Chimdama. I'm an MBA student, and I'm here, thankfully, by Dawn's invitation, found out an hour before this, so I'm glad I could make it. So my question is for Elizabeth. I know you mentioned that you go hardcore, so I wanted to find out if there's anything more hardcore that you haven't shared yet, whether it's advice or like perspective. I'd be curious.
What have you
to.
filtered out?
Yeah, seriously, what have I filtered? Actually, a lot.
Should we get your marketing coordinator to answer that?
Yeah, seriously. He's still in the early phases of his time with us, so they've kept him away from me in large part. So listen, you know what? I have a particular work ethic and work style, and that is not for everyone. And I want to be very open and honest about that because it's not going to work, and it shouldn't work for everyone. It works for me, and that's good. I work hard, but you have to prioritize your health because you cannot like. This is not the only thing that you have to worry about. You have to worry about the rest of your body too, and your relationships. Those are two very, very important things. So I don't think it's less about how tough I am, blah blah. It's more about how can I do the best at what I can possibly, what I want to do, which is prioritizing health and relationships. Anyone on that one? Come on.
I'm the soft one here, I feel like. I think I would just agree and say, yeah, like prioritizing yourself and figuring out what's important. And honestly, everyone has a very different management style here. I know that I push my team quite a bit as well, and sometimes it makes them very uncomfortable, but I know why I'm pushing them. Like, it's not because I'm trying to be malicious or whatever it is. I know that they're capable of more, and I know the business needs more, right? So sometimes I think it's like us finding a voice, and you also need to find the type of manager that you want to work for as well, which is very important in your career. And it takes a few tries before you figure out who you work best with.
Mine might come across as a little callous, but it is sometimes you just don't have to care.
So much truth to that.
I don't know that I want to elaborate on that one.
No, but I think you get to a point in your career where you just have to make those choices, right? Like you need to decide, what are you willing to put up with today? Or, next week. And it comes down back to that question that you asked about, when do I know? Ask yourself, like, do I care? Like, do I care? Like, honestly answer that question.
Yeah, as I think really quickly, your life goes through like different phases. You may not care about something now, you may care about it later, and that's okay. And at some point, you have to be comfortable with that. Like right now, right here, I don't care about this thing because it's not going to bring me happiness, or it's not going to bring me money or time or whatever it is. But maybe 3 years down the line, I will care about it.
And here's what sorry.
That's okay. I was going to say, just an exercise you can do is when whatever the issue is will I care in 5 years? If the answer is no, then maybe it's not worth your troubles.
I also want to say it's how much do I really want to care about this? Because what I really want to care about is myself at some point, my health, my relationships. And this is taking up too much real estate, too much. This is not healthy for me. This is where, unfortunately, at some times I have said, I cannot care about this, nor will I want to care about this anymore.
How much do I want to invest in this?
Yes.
Yeah. Is it worth the output?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I'm very loud. I can do this without. On that same theme of not caring or whatever the case may be, being hardcore, how do you manage that piece of I don't care, but also I'm not a total bitch, or I'm not too emotional, or all of the other stuff.
All of those
Stick with
classic.
Yeah, where it's like if a man was saying something, he's just doing his job, but if it's a woman, she's just being emotional, or whatever the other reasons are we here. So
I think Elizabeth should
I know you're just chomping at the bit.
Well, listen, let me recharacterize this I don't care into purpose. What's your purpose? Because your purpose should drive it. What is your purpose? Why in that moment? What is that purpose? And if your purpose, listen, it's really, really important to care about how others view you if you deem them worthy enough for their judgment to matter. So be very, very careful about who you decide to let in. But let's be very clear, it is very important because that's how you kind of regulate. And if you figure out, I'm like, am I the jerk? Like, am I the villain in the situation? When you trust someone else's opinion of you, and I'm not saying let that net be cast wide and far. Just be judicious about it. But purpose is what it comes back down to. So what is the overall goal of what you're trying to achieve? And how does that factor into the decisions that you're making right now and for whom? And so why does that matter? That matters because it gives you a framework. And that framework then takes completely the consideration of whether you're a bitch or not completely out of the way, or whether or not someone should care about what your decision is, because it actually has nothing to do with achieving a goal. Just be militant about it, right? Like, laser focus, what do you need to do? How do you need to do it? What's your purpose? And is everyone else kind of on your team aligned with that purpose? Then really it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks.
And if they want to think that, let them think that. Let them.
I do.
I've always found that I can always tell people no with a smile, but back it all up with, we've talked about this, we've analyzed it, we have all this data, it's a calculated risk, there we go again, this is me. And this is, let's get going because we've got other things to do. And often in my mind, it's like, how much more time do we have to spend on this? The return on investment is not there. And you talked about failing. Sometimes, yeah, you have to fail to learn something. So just tell them no gently. And something that I've said this before, we're all big girls and big boys, however we want to identify ourselves. People will get over it.
Any other questions in the room? Yeah.
Hi, thank you again for, I will leave the mic, sorry. Thank you so much for the insightful panel. I actually learned a lot. I have a daughter. I'm gonna make sure she's playing with boys hockey now. To be honestly very insightful because you guys talked about changing early on to make sure that, you know, in their lives, to make sure they're set up for the time when they're starting their career. So what advice would you give to a daughter to make sure, you know, they're set up for when they are starting their career? I'm making sure that I don't stifle my daughter, like when she says whatever she wants, you know, and just to be selfish sometimes. That caught me when you said boys play these games and like they just get away with stuff. And usually in the past, girls were taught to just follow the rules, and now I have to make sure my daughter doesn't follow the rule. Do you have any other advice for our daughters?
I can tell you what my parents did. So I also grew up doing competitive sports. I was a swimmer, and my parents put me in my brother's swim team. So I was one of like two girls. So I think that kind of helped me as well. Honestly, my parents, I credit them for this. Anytime I wanted to do something, even if they didn't know, honestly, they had no idea what computer science was. And like, when we were in Sri Lanka, my dad put me in like programming courses, and he was probably just like, oh, she's just hacking her way into playing video games on the computer. So maybe I'll just channel it in a more productive way. They were really good about just encouraging whatever I wanted to do. Also, my dad, I lived with my boyfriend, my ex-boyfriend, sorry, Chris. My ex-boyfriend, so it's not done in Sri Lankan culture that you live with someone that you're not married to. And my dad was just like, I think you're doing the right thing. Like, you should do this. But just so you know, in front of mom, I'm not going to say anything and agree to it. So, like, I just knew my dad had my back. And, like, honestly, my mom did, too. She was just like, you're breaking every single thing that a good Sri Lankan woman should do. And she was uncomfortable with it. But she got on board. So, honestly, that's what I would say is just, like, just see what she's interested in, what she gravitates towards, give her opportunities. And sometimes she's going to make decisions that makes you very uncomfortable. But just be there as a support system if she fails or if she runs into issues that she feels like. My dad was my confidant. I would go tell him when I've messed up. So I'm very glad that I had that.
I don't know if we're still allowed to do this, but also when I was growing up, like, I didn't really have a say. Like, I was going to hockey, I was going to all these different sports, and like, I remember I didn't want to. I didn't want to do any of these things, and then I would go and I would love it, and I would make new friends, and I would be excited the next week, and I would literally like pretend I wasn't. I was like, no, like, I didn't want to do this. This sucks or whatever. But I know that I actually really liked it. So there was a little bit of like forcing me to do things that I think it just comes down to I wasn't comfortable. It's like a new space, new people, you're young, it's scary. So I'm not saying force them into anything, but I did have a little bit of that growing up, and I think it did end up really helping. And I also just think in general, sports or competitive anything, team-based activities, like, you learn a lot about communicating with other people, dealing with different opinions, and then you're also, like, you're all trying to work towards the same goal, like whether that be some tournament or to win that game. So it translates a lot to sort of what you are like in the corporate world too. So I think those experiences are really important and sort of help you shape your personality.
Yeah, it's going to go. No. I'm going to say force your kid, 110% force your kid. No question about that. So we're first generation Guyanese, and I've got 4 older sisters, and we did very well. And everyone asked, well, what was the reason? How did that happen? We were afraid of our mom, right? Like, It's legit. And so why does that mean? Because it means like teach your kid how to win, right? Competitive sports, music, whatever, team sports, individual sports, that kind of paradigm can hopefully wash away the era of the participation ribbon. Good God. So teach your kid how to win. I'm so sorry. I know.
I have badges. I have
I
ribbons
hate
for all
it
of you,
too.
by the way.
and especially for your daughter, one of the things that your daughter will not necessarily have that we had is that idea that you had to be something different than what you are. She can likely be more of what she is, but it's not, her challenges will not be in her formative years. It'll be in her early career. It's her early career. So giving her the confidence now to be like, yeah, it's okay to screw up. It's okay to fear screwing up, but it is not okay to not do anything or not try.
My comment is very similar to yours. My mom is scary.
Yeah.
And I'm the oldest of 5. And what I would say is, I think actually you are probably going to be the best guide for your daughter, because I think about my mom, and the ambition for us was there, was she translated and downloaded to us. So we've always been that way. And so it becomes, what do you want your daughter to be like? What are you observing that makes sense for you, but is also natural enough for her that you can exemplify for her, as well as good behaviors growing up, so that she's got the tools as she enters a career to know how to deal with tough situations.
Sounds like a common theme is we've all had parents who are like slight dictators. So.
She is watching everything you're doing, and you are her biggest role model, and you're probably her biggest hero too. So everything that you were doing is so important, even being here this evening and taking time for yourself.
Bettina, I'm going to add one more, as also a mother of 2 boys, teaching our boys.
Yeah, I take that very seriously. And I have a wonderful partner who has supported me in all of my ambitions throughout my wild and crazy career. And it is completely normalized for my boys that mom is traveling, mom is away, mom is going to be home late. And as a matter of fact, my husband's so great that he's actually completely taken away the job of making dinner, because that was like the mental load was crazy for me. And I'm like, I can't. You want me to teach you how to do
I
that?
repeat the exact same thing about my husband.
Yeah,
Like exactly what you said.
Yeah, he's just taken it, and now I'm like, whew, right? And the beauty of it is that I come home and I find my husband and my 17-year-old cooking dinner together, and I get to sit at the counter and watch them. So I know that we've done something right. Any other questions?
Hi, thank you. My name's Sarah. I'm a family lawyer. This question is for Elizabeth, but also everyone else. But first, thank you so much for this panel and all of your comments so far. I have a lot of things that I'm taking away and letting stew. We talked a lot about like the concept of sitting like a seat at the table, and maybe that's not the right framework, because I look around and at my level there are a lot of female associates, and what I see though is as you get more senior and looking at the partners, it's all men in the leadership roles still, or at least a majority male. And we also talk a lot or at least like in law, but I'm sure in other fields as well, about like business development and how you can build your own book and et cetera, et cetera. But as like a junior lawyer who is, as you know, like head to the table, like the hours, et cetera, like how do you also make time to do the work and like take the steps to ultimately like advance your career and move into leadership roles or seek out those leadership opportunities? I realize that's probably its own panel, but I don't know.
Yeah, and you know what? Well, my answer is going to be consistent to across the board. It's very transferable because the fact of the matter is that there's an emotional load that is expected mostly of women because when you guys all get together, when we get together and when we're talking about when we're carving out space and we're carving out space to talk about the wrong things. And I want to be very clear about that. And I'm not talking about the community. I'm talking about like when you're all getting together, oh, well, it's tough because we have kids or we have care issues or we have life things. You're not talking about business. And men by default don't do that. And what they're doing is when they're broing down about stuff about the business, right? Shop talk is what men call gossip. Is what when they talk about
Same, but
so
different.
Same but different. And so there is a built-in assumption that mentoring for women is called mentoring. For men, it's just hanging out, right? It's just hanging out. It's just kind of being there, and this I'm talking a lot about big firm. Now that being said, at my shop, the person who I was most worried about, the junior I was most worried about, all of a sudden I looked up, I'm like, oh shoot, the young white man who has no frame of reference to his practice and how he develops, he was the one I was worried about. So it's less about who you are. There's some challenges associated with kind of being inherently in your characteristics, but at the end of the day, is making space and time to have the conversations about the things that matter in your workplace. There is no question that the larger context of your life absolutely matters. But when you're thinking about advancement, find that support in your community and in your support system. When you're thinking about advancement and leadership, that is when you're talking business. That's when you're talking about your book.
Last call. Okay. Thank you all. It was wonderful to spend this evening with you all. Artemis has taken off. Okay. Just so we all know, but more importantly, thank you to this wonderful panel of women. It has been a privilege sitting up here with you and learning more about you guys, and I think everybody in the audience would agree that you guys are female icons, and you are the future of many young women that are coming up behind us. And one thing that I always hold firm, somebody told me this when I was young and starting my career, remember to send the elevator back down. So I spend a lot of time, I'm sure like you all, investing in this particular topic and how to build women up and build ourselves up, because I think we're our own worst enemies sometimes. So thank you all. It's been a privilege, and thank you all for coming and joining us this evening.